During the evening of March 13, 1997, an unknown number of very large objects and arrays of large lights were reported across the state of Arizona, starting from just south of Las Vegas and proceeding to the Mexican border. Objects from this event passed through the Phoenix metropolitan area between 8 and 8:30 p.m. headed south towards Tucson. Later sightings around 10 p.m. indicate the unknown objects were retracing their course back towards Nevada. While over 600 witnesses gave reports to City Councilman Francis Barwood, and reports numbering in the thousands were phoned into police, the FAA, and military bases. Other than a few grainy examples, no video or photos exist of these reports. One reason is that witnesses report being transfixed by the sight. Another is that, for the most part, they were brief. At 10 p.m., a series of lights appeared in the sky south of Phoenix. Photographs and video of that event have become the iconic representation of what is now known as the Phoenix Lights. Triangulation of reports and images of that event places the lights in the sky well south of the valley, near the gunnery range at Gila Bend. The only representation of the large black objects at the time was provided by witness Tim Lee, whose illustration eventually made USA Today. In the wake of that event, then Governor Fife Symington held a press conference in which he mocked the press and the witnesses. This had a chilling effect on witness reports. In addition, the majority of contacts gathered by Barwood have since been lost. 10 years later, former Governor Symington described to CNN an observation made at a park near Squaw Peak. This was forensically recreated as a still frame based on the track of a gigantic triangular object whose course had been previously determined by prior witness reports. This would be the last new witness report for quite some time. In January 2014, a witness to the overflight of an object in West Prescott contacted Dr. Lynn Katai, Executive Director of the Phoenix Lights Network, and announced his willingness to come forward with his observations of the 1997 event. Katai contacted Phoenix UFO examiner Larry Lowe and arranged for a meeting in which the witness recounted his observations in sufficient detail to allow forensic recreation of the event. During the interview, specific details were extracted, which were then used to provide forensic art direction to French UFO investigator and animator Laurent Chabin. Based on the recollection of the witness of the relationship of the lights to a characteristic mountain in the distant skyline, the size of the object was determined. Using several key points, a course for the object was determined. Unique to the observation were several details, including a pattern of faint lighting on the bottom of the object and 6 trailing artifacts the witness describes as exhaust plumes. The observation itself was brief and not continuous, as the witness had to move through his house from the back porch to the front porch as the object passed overhead. This report is valuable in that the object was first observed as an array of lights and later resolved to be a large dark object connecting them. The appearance of the object left an indelible impression on the witness.
There's no doubt in my mind at all that that was a spaceship that flew over my house.
What follows is a forensic animation of the details of the witness report based on the timing of key events.
I was sitting there watching TV, and for some reason, I glanced up, and I saw what I thought were stars behind Granite Mountain that were in a line, and I thought to myself, gosh, what constellation is that? And it just sort of went out of my head, and I started watching TV. I don't know how much time passed, maybe 2 minutes, something like that. And I looked up again, and they were much bigger and much closer, and then I realized that these aren't stars. This is something that I need to walk out on the back porch and look at. I saw that they obviously weren't stars. And they were, at that point, I would say they had just come over the top of Granite Mountain. I walked through the laundry room, walked out on the back porch, and looked up, and they just kept getting brighter and closer. They looked just like lights coming. I couldn't figure out what it was. They were different lights than any lights that I'd ever seen before. And then they just continued to get brighter and bigger and closer. I didn't even really know that they were lights. They were a light source. There was something about them that they weren't really like headlights on a car or landing lights on a jet plane at the airport or something. Like I've sat down there on 48th Street when I was a kid and watched the jets come into Sky Harbor, and the landing lights are on, and you're sitting there watching them. And those lights, they're real bright white. These lights were a little bit more yellow. It's like a yellow cast, but they had a depth to them, like they really had strength. I saw the curvature of the front of the ship, and I could see the light like in its well. The tree obscured it for half a second, and then I saw it real clearly straight overhead off to my right. Right as the ship was going over, the light passed off to my right. That's when I saw the bottom, the belly of the whole ship. There was like a light grid. It was almost dancing to a beat. Dim light, almost shadows behind. I wouldn't say that it was intense, but it was definitely profound. To my perception, I thought it looked like it was cloaked in some way so that I couldn't see what was behind it. It was almost like a holographic projection, maybe a few feet away from the bottom of the ship, that was in that light pattern, so that couldn't really look past that. After the light grid went over, that's when I got my first good look at the exhaust plumes on the back porch. That's when I really saw them the best from the side, where I really could see all the colors of the rainbow, shaped kind of like a flag or a pendant coming out the back of the craft. They were just really cool looking. They had impulses of light within the plumes that were individual impulses of light. There was like a fish scale effect all going back with the exhaust, and it also was weaving behind there like a snake. It was like a 3D, all happening at once. Then when I walked through the house, went out on the front porch, got another really good look at the exhaust plumes, and then I could look up and I could see how many stars were just completely gone from the sky, and I realized that this thing was just about the size of downtown Prescott. I'm about a mile from downtown Prescott. Just covered up everything. Once I realized how large it was, it just faded off into the night just quite quickly. I wanted it to last longer. I wanted to see more of it. It just went away.